When you were a kid, did you ever feel bad about coming in dead last in the race at recess? Or maybe you were like me and you just didn't bother to run because you were slow and you knew it. Well, one man holds the world record for the longest time on any marathon ever, and he is unlikely to ever be defeated by another marathoner. Yeah, his time was that long. Hi, and welcome to the inaugural edition of Me, Myself, and iHistory. My name is Seraphim. I'm going to start bringing you great content from the world of weird history, strange happenings, and oddball stuff from the universe around us. Without further ado, let's dive into our episode. The term marathon comes to us from an event in the famous Battle of Marathon, which was fought in 490 BC in Greece between the city-state of Athens and the Persian Empire. At the time, the Persian Empire under Darius I, also known as Darius the Great, had expanded to control almost the entire shoreline of the Black Sea, including parts of modern-day Greece, Turkey, Ukraine, Russia, and other countries. Darius was no slacker when it came to the glory of the Achaemenid dynasty. Darius's outsized ego, however, led to the Ionian Revolt, where several Greek islands controlled by the Persian Empire revolted against their Persian overlords. Athens and Eritrea both sent forces to support the Ionian cities against the Persians. The Persians, of course, made retaliatory strikes against Athens, starting the First Greco-Persian War in 490 BC. What makes this event famous to this day is the defeat of the Persians that left them fleeing in their ships. One soldier, named Pheidippides, or sometimes rendered as Philippides, ran from the scene all the way to Athens. The distance was, in modern terms, just over 26 miles, or 42 kilometers. What's notable isn't so much the distance as it is the fact that he is believed to have run that distance non-stop. He even stripped himself of armor, weapons, and clothing to lighten his load. That's right, Pheidippides ran all the way back to Athens buck naked. Why would he do that, you ask? Well, he thought that the ships were leaving with the defeated Persian army and were headed towards Athens, either to make a raid or to sack the city while the army was away in order to claim dominance over the Athenians. He ran in order to announce the victory, presumably so that the Athenians would stand up and fight if the Persians appeared. He arrived at the Acropolis in Athens and said, "Hail, we have won," and then dropped dead from exhaustion. Thus was born the traditional source of inspiration for the marathon race. However, it would not be until the 1896 Olympics in Athens, Greece, that we would see the first modern competitive marathon race. The marathon has remained an Olympic staple ever since. And that brings us to the subject of our story, Shizo Kanakuri. Shizo Kanakuri was born in 1891 in a Japan that was still under the rulership of Mutsuhito, the Meiji Emperor. Kanakuri was raised in the town of Nagomi in the northwestern portion of Japan's Kyushu Island. The Shizo family were sake dealers. Each day, young Kanakuri had to run 4 miles, or about 6.4 kilometers, to his grade school. This informal training and a love of running would serve him well in the years to come. When he entered college, Kanakuri began to train under Kano Jigoro, the founder of judo. Kano was the first Asian to be a member of the International Olympic Committee from 1909 to 1938, and was an official representative of Japan in the Olympics from 1912 through 1936. Under his tutelage, Kanakuri soon aspired to take his competitive running to the next level. In the early 20th century in Japan, athletics were not highly valued. In 1911, Kanakuri and just one other athlete were chosen to enter the Olympics, Kanakuri as a marathoner and the other person as a sprinter. The cost of the trip was 1,800 yen. Because there was no official support for athletes in Japan, Kanakuri and his brother had to generate the money themselves through fundraisers and donations. crossing the Yellow Sea and then taking the Trans-Siberian Railway to St. Petersburg, and from there on to Stockholm was an arduous trip and had few opportunities for training. Kanakuri would get out at the station stops and he would run on the platform until it was time to reboard and move on to the next leg of the journey. For 18 days, Kanakuri endured poor sleep, food that did not agree with his body, and the white nights of summer in the far north of Europe and Asia. In short, he was exhausted and did not feel well when he arrived. When the race day came, Kanakuri was one of 68 starters. Only 34 of them would complete the race. The first race dropout was after a single mile, or 1.6 kilometers, with temperatures hovering around 90 degrees Fahrenheit or 32 degrees Celsius. The temperatures were much warmer than normal and very difficult on the runners. One runner from Portugal dropped out of the race, was hospitalized, and died the next day from his heat injuries. To his credit, Kanakuri managed to run 16 miles, or nearly 28 kilometers of the race, which is more than most of the dropouts had managed. He wandered into an outdoor garden party next to the race course, where he drank either orange juice or raspberry juice, depending on the source, and was fed some cinnamon rolls and fruit. The Petrie family, which had fed him, also gave him a change of clothes and put him to bed. He was, obviously, exhausted and desperately in need of rest. A short time later, Kanakuri returned home without so much as reporting to the Olympic officials that he was leaving. He was officially listed as missing and would remain so for the next 50 years. Urban legends even evolved around the runner, one of which suggested that he was still running around the country looking for the finish line. Shizo Kanakuri was devastated. He had come to represent his country and win a race. Not only had he not won, he had dropped out. His unfitness for the race in the conditions in Sweden that day left him with shame. He wrote of his shame in his diary, but he also wrote of his determination to return to Japan and work off his shame and bring prestige to his country once more. It was a tough call, but as he noted, failure teaches success, and he was determined not to lose the lesson. Kanakuri continued training and running competitively. He qualified for the 1916 Olympics, which were canceled due to World War I. He did compete in the 1920 Olympics in Antwerp, Belgium, where he placed 16th in the marathon. As an aside, it appears that no one from the Swedish delegation noticed that he had turned up again and was not, in fact, missing. In 1924, he again was in the Olympics in Paris, but failed to finish the race there as well. Kanakuri had participated in domestic races in Japan during these years and has since then become known as the father of Japanese marathon. Kanakuri is credited with the creation of the Ekiden race, a long-distance, multi-stage relay race that remains popular in Japan a century later. Like his first mentor, Kano Jigoro, Kanakuri went into education. Although Kanakuri stayed in touch with the Petrie family, he never spoke of the Olympics. In fact, his family remembered that he never brought up the Olympics unless he was asked about it. He simply focused on educating children and coaching them in running. In 1962, at the 50th anniversary of the 1912 Stockholm Olympics, interest in the missing Japanese runner resurged in Sweden. No one is quite sure how he remained officially missing when he turned up at the 1920 and 1924 Olympics, but a journalist was eventually able to track him down to his comfortable teaching job in Japan. In 1967, he formally accepted an invitation to return to Sweden and finish the race, as well as reunite with the Petrie family. When he got off the plane in Stockholm, he ran around the tarmac to show his vigor. At 75 years old, he was still in good physical shape from all those years of running. While there, he finished the race. It's not clear from my sources whether he picked up where he left off at the Petrie house or reran the whole course. Either way, he set an unofficial world record for the slowest marathon completion time in history. And that time, you ask? A whopping 54 years, 8 months, 6 days, 5 hours, 32 minutes and 20.3 seconds. He commented afterwards, "It was a long trip. Along the way I got married, had 6 children and 10 grandchildren." During his reunion with the Petre family, Bengt Petre, the son of the original host, explained that one of the family's treasured heirlooms was a Japanese scroll with a thank you note that Kanakuri had left for them. Kanakuri looked askance at his hosts, and then he looked at the scroll and said it was just an old Japanese customs form. Shizo Kanakuri died in November of 1983 at the ripe old age of 92 in Tamana, Japan, not far from his childhood home in Nagomi. And that, my friends, is the story of Shizo Kanakuri, the father of Japanese marathon, and the story of how he managed to obtain the unofficial world's record for the slowest marathon time since the introduction of competitive marathon in the 1896 Olympics. If you enjoyed this content, please like and subscribe and share with your friends who love weird history. Comment below if you have details to add to this story or just want to express your thoughts on what you've heard. Until next time, this is Seraphim with Me, Myself, and iHistory signing off.